We hear that amendment and we will put it at the right time. In the meantime, we're taking questions. Councillor Darby.
Thank you. Just on that then, and look, if there was a politician that's maybe been at the forefront of this, it's possibly me, but I think it would be totally inappropriate of me to be on this stakeholder working group. And others have said things in the political realm as well that I think would make it very difficult. And some of the feedback I have heard, Madam Chair, is the public stakeholders are really liking this model. And one of a few said to me that it's actually has an advantage in that politicians aren't on it. Absolutely. They have actually conveyed that to me. However, we might have great difficulty hearing that. They feel that we are at risk of dominating them when we're on those stakeholder groups. And we've got predetermined positions. Now, some would probably say that about me if I turned up on it. It wouldn't be appropriate. But question in that regard, I have emailed a number of boards, I think 3 boards, Aurake, Waitemata and Import Takapuna, and I've said, look, please, this is the report, please contact Jacques Victor if you want to contribute to this in any way. So Jacques, have you heard back specifically from the 3 boards?
No, not from any one of them.
So is there a specific request? Has anybody in officialdom here received a specific request from local boards to be represented? I have had Mr. Member Chair Bergen has conveyed to me an interest in being on this on behalf of his board, and I did say, well, that wasn't the intention, it was for these reasons. But we haven't got an official request in, other than the one that I'm just referring to.
Yeah, no, I have not received anything.
Look, should probably just, okay, that's my probably, I'm sort of questioning and a little bit of comment here, sorry Madam Chair, but I'm happy to second your motion, I think it's your motion, but I think we need to emphasise here that we've learnt a lot from the sea change model, a tremendous amount, and there's massive buy-in to that process. And it was a bit of a risk to run that course, big risk. Sort of, why shouldn't the politicians be making all the decisions? Well, ultimately we do, but it's about how we are informed in our decision making. And we say a lot in this council about tapping into that wealth of knowledge that's in our community and not dominating it, not overriding it, but as long as we signal as best we can and openly who should be around that table, I think that's our task. And I've thought about this a lot, and this is a big issue for Auckland, but I think this is a great sense of ownership amongst Aucklanders and beyond on this issue, and I think we can hand it over, and I'm pretty confident that we'll get a good outcome following a process like this. And I've checked in on that, those that have participated with Sea Change, and they are saying it was tough at the beginning, sorting out all the stakeholders, and Dr. Blakely will well know that, but it is ripping along now, and it is getting through some extremely dense work, and there's a high level of intelligent participation. So I'm leaning on the success of Sea Change, and maybe Dr. Blakely could expand on that success. It's yet to report in, but I'm hearing a high level of confidence, and that's why I'm supporting this model. I really want to reinforce that it is a draft study scope. So this is definitely not bare bones, and it won't be eroded as we go forward. It will only be improved by those that have an even deeper knowledge of the subject matter. And I know that I'm confident that we'll get those, international port logistics tests undertaken. It'll have a really robust technical group sitting in support of the consensus building group, I think it is termed, that will be benchmarking productivity of this port and other ports against the best international ports, not just the Australasian ports. And I know that we can rely upon our so-called lay people to make sure that that all happens. This is hard for council It's not our usual space to hand over. It's just not. It doesn't feel natural to many of us. But I'm encouraging councillors to actually genuinely hand this over to Auckland. Risks, of course, but I think the upside is greater than the downside. Generally, Chair, I don't have any great questions at this time. I think Mr. Victor's received emails, and I could say we could add a few names, but I'll just do that via email. I acknowledge the work that's gone into this, and it's a big task, $1 million, but we're talking about, as some would say recently, $2 billion worth of land asset sitting on our waterfront. Got to get this right, and thanks to the team.
I couldn't agree more, Councillor Darby. Well said, thank you. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, first of all, just like to commend you on this process, Jack. This strikes me as being well thought through. Got a couple of questions stroke suggestions. The first one goes to the funding, and I guess the concern I've got is the port's going to benefit from this if we make the assumption that quite a bit of the work is going to be around logistics, movement of freight, you know, the storage function and so on. That all goes to expertise, I would hope, modelling and the like that ports have. If we assume the outcome is efficiency, that impacts directly on the port's bottom line. So I actually see a better fit in terms of where some money is coming from ports rather than the Merrill budget. I don't understand that. I mean, in some respects, if you were looking at the logistics of this, you could virtually build a virtual port, and other cities have built virtual ports so that you can deal with a lot of the logistics and planning, and I'd hope that ports either have that or they'd be working on that. But that asset is of use to ports into the future, much more so than it is to us. So that's one question. It especially goes to funding. The other suggestion I've got, and I don't want to get into the draft and the like, but just one thing that I'd make a plug for is the issue of resilience around the considerations that go to the port. And I won't say anything more than that. I think it's self-evident as to what that is. And the other question I've got is just around access to information. I think this should be really open and transparent so that as much and all as councillors aren't involved, and I agree with Councillor Darby around that, we can access the information as it is developed, and not just us, but people in Auckland, so they're in an opportunity to engage. And that would be obviously via the stakeholders, one would hope, in the consensus working group. But I really think there's an opportunity to make this really transparent. So 3 points there.
Okay. I'm going to turn them into 4. In terms of the modelling, you're right. There's a heap of work that has already been done by ports and lots of other people. It would be silly not to use that. But and so that is the intention. But what the report says is whenever any of that information is used, it has to be peer reviewed. It can't just be accepted as a given. And so that is made clear in the report. In terms of the funding, that notion certainly, I thought about that. And whether the port should contribute to this.
I'll answer it.
Okay. Resilience, absolutely. It may not be described sufficiently in the draft scope, so happy I can add that. Yes, in terms of the access to information, what we've been thinking, so that is probably something that the CWG will have to do, and Sea Change did something quite similar. So they actually have their own website, and as the information comes on, that is put on the website, and it's quite interactive, and so it's probably a very similar thing. One of the points that I made in the report is around what collaboration means, and one of those in there is open information. You have to be transparent, and so that would be part of that process. Yeah. I'll leave the funding question then.
Mr Mayor, do you want to deal with the funding?
Actually, yeah, I think we ought to do it now. Madam Chair, I do want to have once everyone else has had a crack at it, I just want to finalise. Look, on the funding side, I think what it does do, Councillor Wayne and councillors, is represent the fact that this body of work is critical for myself as a leader of the city, and I made this commitment to it, and so we are delivering it for all of the reasons that you've all picked up on and we know. Secondly, we could spend a lot of time sort of thrashing around trying to find it within our budgets, etc., etc., etc. It's over 2 years. And so rather than do that right now and detract from the need for us to keep very focused on this work and get it up and moving, I don't think that it's much worth it, and so the lead will come from me in terms of the budget. It's fair to say that it is a big chunk of the mayoral office budget. And so what I would indicate to you is that there will be discussions with other parties as to how to meet that.
Like ports.
We will see.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Just what I'm saying is just this is a opportunity for a discussion through my office, representatives and others. But the buck will stop with my office as the primary sponsor of this project. And I think given the nature of it, quite specific nature of it, and the need for us to arrive at an end point, and the fact that I totally believe in this process and the way in which it's been set up, and I have very clear expectations as to the outcome, and there's a range of them that I have, and I'll cover those off at the conclusion of this. But I think just in terms of the budget, I think it's just critical. Take that off the table, recognise that my office and my support staff will take care of that to the ultimate conclusion.
Okay. Councillor Crum.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. This is a really big piece of work that's covering just about every base you can think of. So congratulations, Jacques and the team, for what will certainly be a piece of work that not many could criticise for not having an open feel to it. I think Councillor Darby well worded the way in which it does not sniff of political anything, but has a very wide scope for the community and for stakeholders of all kinds. There is one little addition that I wouldn't mind, and I know you referred to Councillor Darby sending an email for some other groups, but if we've got the opportunity here, I do note that we're giving delegation to the Chief Executive for adding any other groups into the stakeholder reference wider group, but for the purposes here, I'll just have a little addition, if I may, Madam Chairwoman, in case there are objections of any kind, but I'd like to add Manukau Harbour Restoration Society into either the community groups or the specialist interest groups. I don't care where it goes, but they have tremendous knowledge of ports Onehunga holding, and further along knowledge of Metroport and what's going on over that side of town, and of course all the other implications and linkages to, thanks for the nodding head, Dr. Blakely. So if we could add that, that would be fantastic. I have a question on paragraph 31, and it's really more for my information because I don't disagree with it, but the draft scope, final approval of the scope will be the responsibility of that smaller group, the consensus working group. Out of curiosity, was that the same, was the final approval of the scope for transport options with the independent advisory group, the consensus building group? Was that their jurisdiction as well, that the scope would be finally approved by them? And tied in with that, this group can amend the scope as necessary. Do we anticipate that that would be minor amendments from the scope that we read here, or that they've got a broad jurisdiction for amendments as they see fit?
I am going to struggle to answer the first question simply because I don't know, and then there might be somebody else that can answer the transport one in terms of the scope. But so the second part, in terms of, I think if one is going to be truly collaborative in the process, we have to leave it open to that group to decide how much more they add to the scope. I doubt that they will take anything out, and I don't think they're going to reduce it, but they probably will identify things that we just have not identified and agree. And it may also be through the process, once it's even commissioned, that they find there are gaps, and I think they should have the right to then plug those gaps. So yeah, the proposal is that it's left over to them. I did make the note that they clearly need to be aware of the financial constraints. You can't, there is a bit of a balance in that, but it leaves it open to them. They take this draft, they finalise it, and it's their decision, because they have to own it in the end, and so to be able to own it, I have to have a say in what it is. Sorry, I can't answer that first question.
The transport.
Sorry, could you just say the transport question again, please?
So the Independent Advisory Group, or Consensus Building Group for the transport options, did they have final approval of their scope, or did that come back to us?
No, we
So,
did.
So I think the answer is no. Actually, Michael Quinn could probably answer it.
So councillors on that, there was 2 phases. So and there was 3 parts. So the mayoral office led the initial work, and then there was the next phase, and this council had control over those phases. And so when the consensus building group was set up, you approved the terms of reference for that group and the scope of its study.
Okay.
thanks.
Councillor Clough.
I'm just struggling with a couple of aspects of this. So, Jacques, who would be, where would the Secretariat come from to support, especially the consensus working group eventually? I mean, are we, because I would have thought we would be having an outside firm, Pricewaterhouse or something, to keep it tight, totally professional, unbiased, objective. So where are you seeing the Secretariat support? Because I'm assuming it's not the Mayor's office.
So, no, we are looking at providing, so that's included in the budget. So the different support that they will have, apart from the independent chair that will work with both groups, there will have to be a project manager or project director, so somebody that can assist them with a lot of the work. So that would be the main person.
Window.
But they are also...
Well,
I beg your pardon?
Oh, hang on.
You know,
A type of person like Peter Winder in the IAG, someone would basically be the director, the manager of the project.
I mean to leap in, it's just we're talking about that as an example of what
Yeah.
that kind of person could be.
Yeah, so that's what I call the project manager. Then in addition, of course, there would have to be some admin support. And no, I don't think it's appropriate that comes from us. It would be hired in because their job is to support that group. You also notice that there is provision for additional technical advice. And what that is meant to be, so somebody like PwC, for example, I think the study is so broad that an organisation like that probably doesn't have all the expertise. It's probably going to have to be a consortium. So people like that would probably tender for the work. Then not appropriate that they also be the project managers. Right. Okay. But what the independent technical advice is, it seemed to me that you're going to have the consortium that does the study. The CWG may not be experts in everything that comes back, and they may actually want additional independent advice on the advice they've been given. So that's what that one is about.